You are mid-sentence, someone is looking at you, and then nothing, not a pause, not a hesitation, a complete, total disappearance. The thought you were building, the word that was right there, the point you were about to make, simply ceases to exist. And you are left standing inside a sentence with no ending, your mouth slightly open, your eyes doing that strange, unfocused thing where you are clearly looking for something in a room only you can see. And here is what makes it stranger. You are not tired. You are not drunk. You are a person who handles complicated things. You solve problems. You remember details others forget. You are the one people call when they cannot figure something out. And yet, here you are, unable to finish a thought you started 4 seconds ago. So why does this keep happening to you, specifically? Why does it happen more to the capable ones, the ones who hold everything together, the ones who are always fine? What is the mind actually doing in that moment when it goes blank? Because I promise you, it is not doing nothing. It is doing something very specific. And once you understand what it is, you will never look at a forgotten sentence the same way again. There is a kind of person this happens to more than others, and they share something in common that has nothing to do with intelligence or age or how much sleep they got last night. What they share is a history of carrying more than their share, not because anyone forced them, or not always, but because at some point, early enough that they cannot quite remember when, they learned that being needed was the safest way to belong. Psychologists have a name for what happens to children who grow up inside that dynamic. They call it parentification. And when most people hear that word, they imagine the obvious version, the teenager who raised their younger siblings, the child who managed the household while a parent fell apart. And yes, that qualifies. But parentification is also quieter than that, more interior. It is the child who learned to read the emotional temperature of a room before they could read a sentence. The one who knew, from the particular quality of silence in the house, whether it was safe to speak. The one who made themselves smaller, calmer, more useful. Not because they wanted to, but because the environment made it clear that the alternative was dangerous. What this process creates is not maturity. I want to say that again because the world has convinced these people otherwise. What it creates is survival, wearing maturity's clothes. The child did not become capable because they were exceptional, though they were. They became capable because their circumstances demanded it. And the psyche, being the most astonishing survival machine in existence, complied. It built a self that could function, a self that could hold a room together, a self that knew how to seem okay long before it ever actually was. And that self grew up and became you, and it is still doing the same thing, still monitoring, still managing, still holding. Just now it does it in meetings, in relationships, in group chats at midnight, in the particular way you absorb everyone else's stress before your own body has even registered that there was any. The adaptation that follows parentification has its own name too: hyper-independence. The quiet, almost stubborn insistence on handling things yourself, the reflexive no when someone offers to help, the faint discomfort when you have to admit you do not know something, or cannot do something, or simply do not want to. The world reads this as strength. They say things like, "You are so self-sufficient, you are so capable, I don't know how you do it," and you accept the compliment even though something in you knows it is not quite a compliment. It is a description of someone who learned that needing things was a risk they could not afford. Hyper-independence is not a personality type. It is a trauma response that calcified into a lifestyle. It is what happens when a person learns, young enough, that the lesson becomes structural, that other people's reliability is not something you can build on, and so you stopped building on it. You became the foundation instead. You became so consistently the person who shows up, who delivers, who does not fall apart, that the role became indistinguishable from the identity. But here is the cost that nobody talks about. When you are the foundation, you never get to rest. The nervous system of a person who grew up responsible for the emotional stability of others does not know how to receive the signal that the emergency is over. It stays vigilant. It stays scanning. It is always on some background frequency, waiting for something to go wrong so it can be the one to manage it. And a nervous system running at that pitch, carrying that weight, performing that constant low-grade readiness, begins to make triage decisions. It begins to decide what matters and what can wait. Finishing a low-stakes sentence, completing a casual thought in conversation, these are deprioritized, not because you are losing your mind, because your mind is somewhere else. It has already moved on to the next thing it is quietly, invisibly holding. A neurologist and researcher named Stephen Porges spent decades studying the way the human nervous system responds to its environment, and his work offers one of the most useful frameworks I have encountered for understanding why people like you experience the world the way they do. His theory, which he called polyvagal theory, describes the nervous system as moving between three essential states: safety, where connection and rest are possible; mobilization, the familiar fight or flight; and a third state, a kind of collapse or shutdown, that the body moves toward when the threat feels inescapable and exhausting. What matters most here is this: the nervous system does not respond to what is actually dangerous. It responds to what it has learned to associate with danger. And for a person whose early environment encoded emotional unpredictability, or constant responsibility, or the specific loneliness of being the capable one in a room full of people who needed things from them, the presence of other people can register as subtly taxing, not threatening, not hostile, just effortful in a way that solitude simply is not. This is why the quiet room feels different. The empty house, the long drive alone, the hour before anyone else is awake. These are not signs of something broken. They are the nervous system finding its way back to the only state where it does not have to perform anything, where it does not have to monitor anyone, where it can, sometimes for the first time in hours, simply exist without computing the distance between who you are and who the room needs you to be. And this is the distinction I want you to carry, because the world has collapsed two things into one that are completely separate. Solitude and loneliness are not the same experience. They are not even related in the way people assume. Loneliness is absence. It is the ache of disconnection, the hunger for contact that is not coming, the feeling of being in a room full of people and invisible to all of them. Solitude is presence. It is the experience of being fully, quietly, companionably with yourself, not hiding, not withdrawing, not building walls, simply inhabiting your own interior without apology. For the person who has spent years managing the emotional weather of other people's lives, solitude is not escapism. It is the most honest thing they can give themselves. It is the space where the mind can finally complete its own thoughts without the interruption of everyone else's needs. It is, in the truest sense, where the self gets to remember that it exists. The forgetting mid-sentence, the going blank, the zoning out in conversations. These are not failures of cognition. They are the mind's way of saying that there is not enough of you present in this moment to also finish this thought. Some part of you is elsewhere, doing what it always does, holding something, anticipating something, bracing for something. The sentence falls through the gap between who you are and where your attention actually lives. There is a concept in humanistic psychology developed by Carl Rogers called the internal locus of evaluation. It is deceptively simple. It means that the place from which you judge the value of your experience, your choices, yourself, is located inside you and not outside. Most people with the history I have been describing live from the opposite, an external locus. Their sense of whether they are okay is derived from the room's response. Did people seem satisfied? Did I seem competent? Was I needed enough to justify the space I took up? These questions are not conscious. They run in the background like software, constant and consuming. And the problem with calibrating your worth to other people's reactions is that people are inconsistent, distracted, complicated. Their moods shift. Their approval is conditional. And you, measuring yourself against that, will shift with them. You will feel like enough on the days you are praised, and not enough on the days you are not. And eventually, you will not be able to distinguish between what you actually want and what will make the room respond well. The internal locus of evaluation asks a different question. Not what do they think of this, but what do I think of this? Not was I enough for them, but was I honest? Was I present? Was I aligned with what I actually value? And the moment you begin to locate your self-worth inside your own experience, rather than in the mirror of other people's reactions, something in the nervous system begins to settle, because you are no longer scanning the room for data about your own value. You are simply in the room, which is, it turns out, a completely different experience of being alive. I want to speak now to the grief of it, because there is a grief here that does not get named often enough. The particular exhaustion of having been the reliable one, of having been the person who holds things together while everyone else gets to fall apart, of having been so consistently capable that the role became invisible. The way a wall becomes invisible once you stop noticing it is holding the ceiling up. There is an unspoken contract that forms around capable people, and it goes like this. Because you can handle it, you should. Because you are strong, you do not need gentleness. Because you never break down, there is no reason to check if you are close to it. And you have been honoring that contract, probably for most of your life, at a cost so gradual and so constant that it stopped feeling like a cost. It started feeling like just who you are. But that contract was never legitimate. You did not sign it freely. It was written around you before you had the language to question it. And you have been performing its terms ever since, mistaking obligation for identity, mistaking exhaustion for devotion, mistaking the inability to stop for the desire to continue. Your worth is not located in your output. It is not measured in how many people you steadied, or how rarely you asked for help, or how well you managed the situation. Your worth was present before any of that. It existed before you became good at anything, before you became reliable, before you learned to read the room. The next time a thought disappears mid-sentence, before the small internal wince, before the quiet self-assessment that says you are scattered, or failing, or not quite enough, try something else. Try receiving it as information. Your mind went somewhere. It is holding something. It is carrying something it has not yet been given the space to put down. You are allowed to put it down. You are allowed to be someone who does not always finish their sentences, who needs more quiet than most, who took on too much too young, and is still, even now, learning what it feels like to be held by their own life, rather than holding everyone else's together. That is not weakness finding its way out. That is the self, finally, finding its way home.